free, as the Bible says. Before we go back to Greg Palast, think about the guests you hear here. The whistleblowers, the intel, the CBS reporter that blew the whistle, the whistleblowers of Fukushima, the William Benning, number 2 or number 3, depending on how you look at it, number 4 at the NSA, the director of major operations, exposing everything here on air. But we'll also take an article out of Time magazine that nobody's covering and go, look, whistleblower claims CDC covered up data showing vaccine autism link. We're a clearinghouse of the stuff the system hopes gets lost in the cracks. And that's why it's important to remember that when you tell friends and family about the radio show, when you send a link to a YouTube video or to the free podcast or Infowars.com/show to the free video feed, when you reach out more people, that's the power of humanity that the globalists can't trump. And when you go to InfoWarsStore.com and get the Made in America, long sleeve, modern camo, Molon Labe, come and take it shirts, belt buckles, things like that, you get to meet like-minded people, have really good-looking Made in America high-quality products, and fund this operation. More of the camo shirts that keep selling out. We can't get enough of these. I'm trying to get these for months. We only get 300 and something Made in America long-sleeve Molon Labe. We should be selling them for $50. They're $26.95. And they're going to sell out. And I looked at Weldon and I said, I guess we'll get something from Ecuador or Mexico. At least it funds people in this hemisphere. I mean, I cannot get American made in the stuff people want. I mean, that's how screwed up this country is. But it's still made in America. Everything in the Made in 1776 line at madein1776.com. It costs us like $10 a shirt instead of $2 in Mexico to bring you this shirt. Anyways, the point is they're available at InfoWarsStore.com. It was supposed to end this morning, but customarily, they like to give me a few extra days to promote stuff. If you haven't gotten the super high-quality nutraceuticals at InfoWarsLife.com, the Nascent Iodine, the X2, the Silver Bullet, Colloidal Silver, the Super Mel, Super Film Vitality, there's some specials going on that. You can get 10% off with promo code WATER on all the water filtration systems. We've got the best stuff that's out there for the price. The Pro Pure G2, the clearly filtered other great brands, 10% off. You can always get 10% off, but the free shipping ends today. In fact, I'm going to go there and tell them after the show, look, I know they're in there listening, end it at 2 o'clock. In fact, it's going to end in an hour and 20 minutes. Hour and 23 minutes, it's going to end. Boom, it's over. You want the free shipping and to stop drinking all the glyphosate and garbage in the water. You're crazy if you don't filter your water for your children. And the comparable filters they sell at stores, just clean out the bad taste and don't remove down to non-detectable levels the fluoride, the chlorine, all the garbage like these G2 systems do. And they either remove it all or 99+%. I mean, there's hundreds of chemicals out there, but the point is they can reduce it almost down to nothing. It's the best gravity-fed system out there, and this is the last day. It will end today as well. In fact, I'm going to tell them at 2 o'clock to take it down. You can get, instead of $54.95 for a year of the nightly news and all the films at prisonplanet.tv, it is basically half off right now. 20 people can use each membership, so it comes down to 12 cents per person a day, $2.50 a month, $29.95 a year instead of $54.95, and you are funding this tip of the spear news operation. Again, it is so essential. I want to thank you all for your help. When you get the highest quality nutraceuticals at very competitive prices, you can get 2 bottles of X2, get a free bottle of Ancient Defense Herbal Boost. It's simply amazing. Myself and my children are taking it. We haven't gotten sick yet. Cross our fingers, knock on wood. The things that are in it are known to boost immunity. And then they come right out and admit the flu shot has never been guessed the right mutation, lowers your immunity, it does not help you. I mean, that's even in mainstream news now. It's just crazy how sunlight and vitamin C is what you need. Now, I'm ranting. Going back to Greg Palast of gregpalast.com, we'll tell you about his newest book in a moment. And I want to open the phones up if you've got any quick questions or comments about different scandals, back to SNL that he investigated for the feds, right through to current derivatives. The toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. Your chance to talk to economist, investigative journalist, Greg Palast of gregpalast.com. Now, Greg, I'm asking the questions here, and I want you to get to the IMF riot document, finish up with that, tied into current things that are happening. Then I want to give you the floor to talk about the biggest scandals that haven't really broken yet and things that you're hot on the heels of, because you have a history here joining us for, I guess, about 15 years or longer of really dropping bombshells on this show. So get into the IMF riot, current destabilization, and you've got the floor, Greg Palast.
Okay, well, the first thing is the IMF riot. Basically, we got inside documents which suggested that the IMF and the World Bank were actually secretly telling finance ministers, if we're going to crack down on the workers in your economy, take away their pensions, etc., first we need a shakeup, and what we do is we squeeze them. We need a riot, basically. And I went to Joe Stiglitz, who had been the chief economist of the World Bank. He'd also been a member of the president's cabinet under Clinton as chief of the Council of Economic Advisors. But you know, once you get a Nobel Prize, you're kind of a free person. You can now open your mouth and you're kind of safe. So I said, Dr. Stiglitz, it looks like they're planning riots. And he said, yes. There's a quote. We called those the IMF riots. He said, we just squeezed. The plan was you squeeze and squeeze until people explode. When they explode, then you can bring the tanks into the street. That's what we're seeing now with the game being played with the nation of Greece and all over the southern tier nations of the European Union, like Portugal, Spain, Italy, and even though it's not southern, is Ireland. What's happened in Greece is that when they became part of the euro, there was a con game going on. When you become part of the euro, you can't have more than a 3% deficit. So the Greek government, to hide their deficit, cut a deal with Goldman Sachs to make phony currency swap exchanges. The Greek government paid Goldman about $400 million for running this scam, and which we uncovered. They never denied it. That's absolutely what happened. The government says, I'm correct. Big deal. They did it. They got caught. And then the creditors said, okay, we're going to raise your interest rates because you've been lying. So suddenly they're paying. People in Greece are now stuck with about $14,000 per person in interest payments per year. That's almost what their entire salary. So it became impossible. They're now down to more than 25% unemployment, which is a bit higher than what we had in America in the Great Depression. People's wages are down by a third. Their pensions have been cut in half by the leaders of the Eurozone, the European Central Bank, controlled by the German finance minister, a guy named Schäuble. And so you're talking about a situation that's worse than the Great Depression. But unlike the Great Depression, where we had a President, Franklin Roosevelt, agree with him or not, he said, this has got to end, and started putting people back to work and ending that Great Depression, obviously ultimately ended by a war. But in Greece, the Germans are saying, and the rulers of the Eurozone, the bankers ruling the Eurozone are saying, 25% unemployment, your wages is cut by a third, your pension's cut in half. That's not enough. You need more. You've got to, they call it reform. And what it is punishment. And they kept squeezing people and squeezing people. You have teachers hunting through garbage cans to eat.
And people dumping their children off at the hospitals. And
right.
I mean, I go back to the founding of the EU. I've seen the different documents and statements. They founded it as a way to economically take over countries. And so just like with IMF and World Bank money to the third world, they say, here's the loan agreement, the things you have to do, and it's go into debt, it's buy your products from the very globalists that just loaned you the fiat money, and then basically the leaders walk off with a payoff and then hand the country over to them, and then all the globalists fly in when they've depressed your economy and buy it up, correct?
Yes, and well, let me just get to this, because what happened was people were squeezed, and they got what they wanted. They got the riot. A bank was burnt down with a couple people burnt to death inside, and suddenly the people, because of the riots, suddenly the tanks hit the streets, and the European banking system took over Greece. Basically, it was a kind of financial coup d'etat, and they started dictating further cuts in wages. You have to sell off your properties. They're selling off their biggest port to the Chinese. They're selling off the big power company. They sold off the water systems, and now they're selling off the beaches, and everything that is or isn't nailed down in Greece is being sold off for nothing, for peanuts, to supposedly pay off these debts. They call it reform. It's grand theft, and that's the game. And when I talked to Stiglitz himself about this, he says, yes, that's what they're doing. And his phrase, let me repeat, this is a quote. They don't care if people live or die. They don't care if people live or die. That's a quote from the guy who was the chief economist of the game. Okay, but now he's free because he's got his Nobel Prize and he feels he could speak out. He was, I have to tell you that when I quoted him and put his stuff on television, he was at first upset because he was worried, as he was hoping maybe he'd be brought back into the mainstream as, but no way. And, he had been fired by the globalists as chief economist of the World Bank because he hadn't he had raised internal objections to some of this disastrous activity, literally generating riots so you can take over a nation's finances and take away all their capital, all their products. And the ultimate thing they're trying to take from Greece, too, is Greece has a lot of offshore natural gas, and that was one of the things that they insisted on seizing, which is why it's also goes into Cypriot territory, why they bankrupted Cyprus. They want that gas, too. And how do you get it cheap instead of having to pay full price? Well, you seize the nation, and the gas comes along with it. So you did have these riots, and now this year, finally, after the nation of Greece had everything sucked, the nation was sucked dry, the people stood up last week and voted for a new party, a revolutionary party, supposedly, called Syriza, headed by a guy named Alexis Tsipras. And I had an article about the election that was put on the front page of the big Sunday paper in Greece. Because I said, it's very nice that you have a guy who's standing up to the Germans and the big bankers. But on the other hand, he's saying he wants to stay within the Eurozone. He wants to keep the euro. I said, that's like saying, I want to cure my leprosy, but I don't want to leave the leper colony. That's the problem. The euro was an instrument of destruction. And I know that because the guy that invented the euro is another economist named Robert Mundell in Columbia University of New York. And he told me, point blank, that the purpose of the euro was to destroy the powers of governments, of working people, of labor unions, cut pensions, cut rules. He was like the big advisor to Reagan and Thatcher on cutting the power of working people in the economy. He told me that point blank. I have him quoted, I have it on tape. But the entire purpose of the euro is to take away control of an economy from the public, from the parliaments and congresses, and it would only be the economies, your budgets, your exchange rates, the money supply, all these things. Every detail of your economy and your government would be taken out of the hands of the electorates of these nations. He's told me that directly. I've got it on tape. I published it, and he's not taking it back. But that's how the euro came about, and so with Greece and the euro, they didn't stand a chance. In fact, the German finance minister after the election said, and this is a quote worth remembering, a good quote worth remembering. The German finance minister said, elections don't mean anything. And believe me, that applies not just to Greece, but to the United States, to England, to Italy, to Spain. Elections don't mean anything. That's the key. Once in a while they get arrogant and they tell you what they really mean.
Well, this is the essence of the private global corporate government. And the worst part about it is they don't like free market. They like monopolies. So they're promoting a type of real low-level socialism, of just subsistence socialism, that they're then exempt from and basically tax exempt from, just like the France's Socialist Party with all these Swiss bank accounts. And it really is just a new above-the-law class of royalty. Just like the Saudis are just some thugs, still the second generation in power. North Korea is a third generation. Pretty soon they'll be like the Queen of England, tax exempt, owning oil companies above the law because she's, 20th generation or whatever. And then you've got Stiglitz in an article just a few months ago saying the Federal Reserve is tyrannical. We had that on screen earlier. And you've got Rolling Stone saying everything is fixed in LIBOR. So it's not just Greg Palast, the economist, saying this 20 years ago, or Ron Paul saying it 30 years ago, or Alex Jones saying it 20 years ago. Now, as you were saying, it's just out in the open. And it's not like these bankers took over through economic competition. They took over by getting governments to accept giving them unlimited currency and credit through things like the Federal Reserve. And then now they're waging a war against grassroots prosperity, even pushing how we need to live under austerity and how it's liberal and